if we continue and compare, the other players will later, we'll see that Schuhart invented two rules for demonstrating data. Right now, the actual wording that he used to talk about the very dense. I think he was trying to be very, very precise, but sadly, it's not the kind of language that in today's world is going to serve. So Wheeler did a very nice job of kind of.
So I changed it a little bit. Rule 1, data should always be presented in a way that preserves the evidence in the data to be able to make reasonable predictions about what is likely to happen in the near future. And rule number 2, whenever anything is used to summarize it, the summary should not mislead the user into taking action they would not take if the data were presented in a time series chart in the flow of time.
People go here and they're saying summarized data. And from that summarized data, they're making decisions that have direct economic results on the actions that they take.
But if they saw this same data in a flowchart and sequence and time, they may not take the same action.
So let's take a look at that a little bit further and see how that might have an application. In this case, we'll adjust that Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle because they were contemporaries, and as a matter of fact, as those of us who are baseball watchers, they played on the same team. And again, we have a table here, and if we were to look at it enough time, we would probably be able to glean some information from it. And if we visualize that chart, we put it into this great little visual. What do we have? I mean, what is this trying to tell us? What's the evidence in this data? What do you think, Hans? You're not a baseball fan. What do you think when you look at this particular chart? What's it telling you?
Well, I think there's a lot more variation. The delta in Maris is, I think, visually bigger than the one for Mantle, and the period for Mantle is more extended. So it's kind of, what are you looking for? Consistency or duration?
And those are all, from what we're looking at, those are very, very reasonable and very, very good observations. I mean, I'm a more simple guy. I would probably say that it looks like Maris was able to hit more home runs than Mantle a couple times, but that Mantle's career was longer. Probably hit a lot more home runs overall, and which is practically the same thing as what you said. But the issue here is what can we do with that information? I mean, how can we use that information? How can we make that information operational? And the problem is that this is modeling something that doesn't really exist. Because Mantle and Maris did not start playing at the same year. Right? This is looking at their career, but if you look at a chart in context and to catch the relationships of time, in other words, the context comes from those relationships in time if you're looking at actually being able to predict and understand and do something about it, then you end up with a very, very different chart. And this is both the table and the chart aligned so that the year that Maris started, which was 57, is aligned with 57 in the career of Mickey Mantle. And I don't know about you, this is instantaneously a very interesting visual. Don't you agree, Hans? Tells a different story, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I mean, this is straight from Wheeler, but I mean, there seems to be a correlation, but at this point, we don't have enough context to know what that correlation could be, or if that correlation is real and causal, or whether it's just apparent.
For instance, I saw a chart once that showed the correlation to suicides in the month of July with the eating of ice cream, and certainly there's no causal relationship there, no matter how similar it may look on a graph.
We need to have more context to understand this. For this model to be useful, we need more context. And of course, many people, when you go to companies, know the context of their company, and they're able to fill in the dots.
Now, people who know baseball will know what this is. Does anybody want to venture a guess? on the New York Yankees at that time, Mantle batted third in the batting order, and Roger Maris batted fourth. So if you were a pitcher and you were pitching against the Yankees at that time, it was a nightmare. Who do you pitch to?
Mantle ended up actually, and it's not on this chart, having a tremendous number of walks because they walked him all the time to try to pitch to Maris, who had a lower batting average, right? And that gave Maris tremendous opportunity to then to hit home runs. So this is a case where the context has given this some real meaning that can be discussed, that can be led to deeper understanding of what took place. It may be even operationalized if you happen to be lucky enough to have two of the greatest home run hitters who ever lived on your team. Maybe you want to have them bat number 3 and number 4, right? But in itself, it too is not quite enough to be used. It's unless you're in a trivia conversation and you want to prove somebody wrong or something like that. So.